Hello, listeners. This is Kat, and welcome back to Put Your Hands Up Podfics. This is the continuation of Weekend at Bakugo's. This will be Part 2, Chapter 2. Little Izuku scrunched his nose in concentration as they headed towards the cafeteria. I don't know, he said quietly. The realization seemed to confuse him. I think I was in a classroom. Kacchan was there. And what did I look like? Bakugo asked, hoping that most of the school had passed through already and that the cafeteria would be quiet. Like this, Izuku squeaked, putting his many hands on Bakugo's face. So, not 4 years old then. He's remembering where current Deku actually was yesterday. Sort of. He puffed his cheeks up, and Izuku squidged them back down to make Bakugo stick his tongue out. Izuku squealed in delight, so he did it again, and again. Each time Bakugo found it harder and harder to stop smiling at his charge. He felt a twinge of nostalgia, as he remembered them both playing this game with Auntie Enko, when they used to have playdates, and it struck him how very long they'd known each other. Yo, Bakugo! He spun around to see Kirishima jogging up the corridor towards them, who slowed as he spotted the kid in Bakugo's arms, eyes widening. Did Aizawa fill you in? Bakugo asked sharply. Huh? Kirishima was still staring at toddler Izuku. Oh, yeah, that's why I came and found you. He said you might need an extra set of hands. Saints, both of them. Kirishima continued. The rest of the class will be coming to lunch in a bit, but he asked that everyone leave you both alone and that we'll be introduced slowly back at the dorms after classes this evening. You're also exempt from this afternoon's lessons. That's good to know. Thanks for coming to find me. He looked down at Zuku, who was staring at Kirishima's bright red spiky hair. They both grinned at the toddler. Izuku, this is my friend Kirishima. Do you want to say hello? Bakugo coaxed gently. Izuku waved and reached out a hand towards the redhead, but tightened his other around Bakugo's uniform again. Kirishima smiled widely, took Izuku's small hand in his and shook it. Nice to meet you, little man. You can call me Kiri. Hello, Kiri. My name's Zuku, Izuku said proudly, and wrapped his hand around one of Kirishima's fingers. Kirishima looked like he was going to burst into tears as he glanced at Bakugo and whispered incredulously, Zuku! I'd forgotten how clingy he could get with people. Bakugo laughed slightly as he turned back to the cafeteria doors. Come on, we can eat and talk. They entered as an awkwardly joined trio, as Izuku was clearly not prepared to let go of either of them. They found a quiet table away from the main hustle and bustle of the cafeteria, and Kirishima set down their dishes. Bakugo was about to put Izuku on the seat between them, but realized that Izuku wouldn't be tall enough to reach his bowl. He began to look around for a cushion or something that he could use as a booster seat. His arms were starting to ache. Zuku, are you going to let Kacchan eat his lunch? Kirishima asked gently. Izuku nodded but didn't let go of Bakugo. Do you want to sit with me for a bit? I bet he's been carrying you for ages, Kirishima wheedled. They watched as Izuku's brow furrowed. Then he slowly released his grip on Bakugo's clothes and leaned towards Kirishima instead, who deftly grabbed him under his arms and repositioned the toddler onto his lap, so they could both reach their lunches. Thanks again, man, Bakugo said as he stretched his arms above his head. You're surprisingly good with him. You should have seen his reaction to All Might earlier on. He settled himself at the table and made a start on his food. Kirishima shrugged. I got a lot of little cousins, had a lot of practice. So what actually happened? Aizawa only gave us a real brief overview. They'd managed to get Izuku his favorite katsudon, and he was quite focused on getting as much into his mouth as possible, which allowed Bakugo to bring Kirishima up to speed. He seems to remember being in class yesterday, but only remembers me. Think all his memories are there, but his 4-year-old brain can't process it maybe. It's really weird, but the principal seems certain it's only temporary and that he'll be back to normal by Monday. Bakugo explained between mouthfuls. Oh, and no one can call him Deku. It's complicated, but he doesn't know that it's a nickname. Kirishima nodded slowly as he ate around Midoriya, who now had sauce dripping down his chin. So, why'd they ask you to... He stopped as Bakugo unfolded a napkin to wipe Izuku's little chin. Kirishima noticed how careful his friend was as to not disrupt Izuku's eating, how he pulled the kid's bowl a little closer, and he barked out a laugh. Bakugo looked up suddenly. What? You say something. Nah, never mind, answered my own question. Kirishima grinned, showing off all his pointed teeth and ruffled Izuku's hair, who giggled in his lap. They'd waved to the rest of Class 2A across the cafeteria, finished their food, and Izuku had begun to yawn widely, rubbing at his eyes. They'd left the cafeteria as they arrived, Bakugo cradling a now very sleepy Izuku and Izuku gripping one of Kirishima's fingers. But now Izuku wouldn't let go, and Kirishima needed to go back to class. "I'll see you later, little man, I promise." Kirishima had both of Izuku's hands wrapped in his, while trying to subtly loosen the toddler's grip. But... Izuku's chin was beginning to wobble. Oh no. "Dude, that's a hell of a grip for a 4-year-old, Kirishima hissed at Bakugo. "You did say he shouldn't have his quirk, right?" "Oh shit." "That's what the principal said, yeah, but they did say it appears, so I don't think they were certain," Bakugo shot back, concern lacing his voice. "I'm just gonna..." "Wait, no!" Bakugo could have sworn he saw the briefest flash of green as Kirishima opened his hands. Kirishima shot backwards as if electrocuted. The toddler hiccuped and then began to cry in earnest. Shit, Bakugo set Izuku on the floor and checked him over for any sign of injury. "What did you do?" He shot a look over his shoulder at Kirishima, who was already hurrying back towards them. He'd only really gone a couple of feet. Kirishima held his hands up in front of him, showing Bakugo one hardened finger. "I thought if I activated it in the finger he was holding, it might feel weird enough that he'd let go." He seemed breathless, and his eyes were wide. "Well, it worked," Bakugo huffed. "But why did you jump? That's what freaked him out." "Dude," Kirishima whispered. There was an uncharacteristic shake in his voice that made Bakugo look up instantly. "What?" "I didn't jump." "What do you mean you didn't jump? What the fu—" "I was pushed." They both looked down at Izuku, who was now wailing like a siren. "Fuck." Bakugo took a deep breath through his nose before picking up Izuku again and rubbing his back to try and calm him down. "Okay, you need to head back to class and..." he started. "Dude, no, what?" Kirishima interrupted him, but Bakugo waved him quiet. Izuku's crying was subsiding into sniffles and huffs in the crook of Bakugo's neck. "You go back to class," he said firmly. "You've got training with All Might and 13 this afternoon, right?" "Yeah, but..." "Fill them in on what just happened, quietly. If you see Aizawa on the way, ask him to come to the dorms. If you don't see him on the way, ask All Might and 13 to ask him to come to the dorms." Bakugo reeled off quickly. Then he closed his eyes briefly and muttered, "If Izuku decides to throw an All Might-sized tantrum, we'll need Aizawa on hand." Kirishima was nodding fervently, eyes still wide and staring at Izuku. "Oi!" Bakugo snapped his fingers in front of his friend's face. "Right, yeah, okay, it's just..." "Geez, man," Kirishima murmured. "I know," Bakugo said calmly. "Go, we'll be fine." Kirishima nodded, and Bakugo noticed how he hesitated for a second before ruffling Izuku's hair again. Then he turned and ran to class. Bakugo looked down at the still sniffling Izuku just as he yawned widely again. "Want a nap, kiddo?" he murmured to the little boy. "Mm-hmm," came the reply from his shoulder. He appeared to have no idea what had just happened, just that something had scared him, when he was already upset. "Yeah, of course you do. Had a long day, huh?" He kept talking, just saying whatever came into his head without filter, as they walked towards the dorms. By the time he was letting them into the common room, Izuku was sound asleep in his arms. Bakugo carried Izuku to his room, but decided against setting him down in the bed. Instead, he grabbed the All Might bedspread and headed back downstairs. As gently as he could, Bakugo lowered Izuku onto one of the sofas and covered him with a throw. Then he sat on the edge of the low table and put his head in his hands, groaning quietly. Izuku is a toddler, and he still has his quirk. He's a 4-year-old with super strength. He pushed Kirishima 3 feet because he was upset. Holy fucking shit. By God, I hope they were right about the 3-day thing at least, he whispered to himself. Despite his concerns, he couldn't help but smile as he watched Izuku roll over in his sleep, his tiny fist full of All Might's bedspread face. That was how Aizawa found him, half an hour later, sat on the table with his phone in one hand, chin in the other, and his back to the main door. "Bakugo," Aizawa whispered. "Fuck!" Bakugo yelped as he slipped off the table in surprise. They both froze and stared at Izuku, who, thankfully, continued sleeping. "Language," Aizawa hissed at him. "Sorry," Bakugo hissed back. "But you snuck up on me, sir." Aizawa opened his mouth to respond, but took a deep breath instead and beckoned Bakugo over to him. Bakugo got up from the floor and made his way to where Aizawa was standing closer to the door. That's when Bakugo noticed the bags. I found some things of Aries in storage that may be useful. Aizawa indicated to some of the contents. There are some pajamas, a stool she used to reach the sink and stuff, little bowl with a kitty spoon, and a pop-up roll guard that stops them from falling out of bed in the night. If there was a wistful edge to his teacher's voice, Bakugo wasn't about to comment on it. He just nodded, immediately realizing how underprepared he would have been for even just a weekend with a small child. This revelation must have shown on his face because Aizawa smiled at him, placing a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry we had to drop this on you. I know you like to be the best at everything, but just remember, this isn't a competition. You've only been a parent for... Aizawa checked his watch. Like 3 hours, and he's still alive. He's been fed, he's warm, and he's happy enough to sleep. That's a win, kiddo. And don't think for a second you need to sort everything out on your own. Talk to me, talk to the staff, talk to your classmates. It takes a village to raise a child, after all. Bakugo had no idea what that last bit meant, but he got the gist. Oh, that reminds me. Aizawa reached into his pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. This is my personal number. You need me this weekend, you call me. Once it's in your phone, please burn the paper. I do not want Kaminari or Mina or pretty much anyone else getting a hold of it. Understood? Yes, sir. Thanks, and I will, don't worry, Bakugo said quietly. Then he remembered. Did Kirishima run into you at all? No, why? Has All Mighter 13 contacted you this afternoon? No. Why? Aizawa's brow furrowed. Because. Bakugo passed a hand over his face. I think Izuku still has his quirk. Aizawa's eyebrows vanished into his hair. They heard a shuffling and turned to where Izuku was trying to sit up on the sofa. He was wriggling so much that the bedspread slid onto the floor. Izuku frowned at it and squeaked, "Shit!" You can say that again, groaned Aizawa from beside him. Bakugo snorted and had to bite his lip to stop himself from laughing. All right, listeners, this concludes Chapter 2 of Weekend at Bakugo's. Chapter 3 will be up next. I hope you all are enjoying this one so far. Eager to hear your thoughts and reactions, and as always, thank you so much for listening.